morning, everyone. Please bear with me. Somehow I've got winter allergies. First time in my life, so bear with me. I am going to move to approve the minutes of December 14th, 2021. When you vote or approve, please say your name and what you're going to do. We need that on record now. So may I have a second, please?
Jeffrey Bruzek, I second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
James Frechette, aye.
Jeffrey Bruzek, aye.
Mary Stratton, aye. We have approved the minutes of December 14th, 2021. Thank you. I'll now move on to the 2021 RFD annual update. Chief, do you want to go over that with us?
I would love to. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
So I'm going to work on sharing my screen here. Nope. So 2021 was a very busy year for the Richfield Fire Department. We went on just under 4,700 calls. Of those, just over 1,000 of them were for fire response, and then almost 3,700 of them for medical response. We continue to post really good response times, which, I mean, 7.2 square miles, we're pretty proud of that. We're able to get around very quickly and very easily through the city. I think one of the big things is we saved a lot of property. Less than 1% of the property that we had to deal with was actually lost due to structure fire or other incident issues like flooding or things like that. So here's just another way to kind of look at the numbers. You can see almost 80% of the calls we go on are medical calls, and just under 2% of our calls are actually fire. And then everything else is kind of sprinkled in there as well. And I'll kind of pause as I go. If you have any questions, just feel free to chime in. This overlapping calls is one of the concerns, and we'll talk about that towards the end. You can see these overlapping calls, right around a third of the calls that we go on, or a third of our responses are what we call overlapping, which means more than one unit is out at the same time. As part of that, there's a significant concern because a lot of those are actually triple headers. For some reason, when we get a call, it's usually followed by another call, and then shortly after that, another call. So it really stretches the crew's ability to do anything if that third call would be a fire call. You can see the calls are actually shared pretty well amongst the shifts. So we're pretty happy that not one shift really gets beat up with any particular call type. And then this was a year that we had more mutual aid received than given. And this kind of fluctuates year to year, but it's an interesting statistic to kind of keep track of. Just means we had more people coming to help us this year in 21. And you can see in 2020, we went and helped other people more often. So the nice part is this doesn't cost us anything. It's just neighbors helping neighbors. So now in 2022, we're hoping to continue to build the momentum. We've already promoted Josh Nelson to captain, Kevin O'Connell to lieutenant, and that was as a result of the vacancy that Captain Armstrong left when he left at the end of 21. We most likely will have another captain leaving in the first half of this year as well. And then we'll obviously have at least one promotional process to go along with that. I mentioned the overlapping calls. One of the ways that we're going to try and attack the overlapping calls is to put two people on additional shifts so that we'll actually staff that shift to a 9-person shift. So these 3 new firefighters, one of them will replace Captain Armstrong's position, and then the other 2 will actually become extra firefighters. One where the suspected retirement is coming, and then the other one on the other shift to give us 9 people. What that does is it puts 2 people on engine, or 3 people on engine 2. And as a result, we should have more initial firefighting force arrive on scene on our east side. I'm sorry, our west side. Less times of Rescue 1 having to come across the city to back them up on a cardiac arrest or a significant injury kind of thing. And then hopefully less overtime. And one of the things we're going to watch is if we can keep our overtime costs down, that'll help us to show that those positions are actually valuable, not only to increase our staffing on the west side, but also to give us the ability to bring down our overtime, which in turn has a better effect on people's individual health. We had a record year of overtime last year, and we're hoping to bring that down. I think the big thing for the Civil Service Commission this year will be our promotional process, and that'll be a combined process of lieutenant and captain process. And we'll probably come to you in the late summer with a recommendation for a process at that time, and then hoping to get that so that we can get that going in September. And I will pause there for questions.
I have a question about
Chief?
oh, Jeffrey, you go ahead.
Okay. Chief Jeffrey Bruzek, just a question. You indicated that 1% of the fire visits that you guys made had a loss. Is the 1% the number of? Is it just the ratio of visits, or is it like the value of how much value was lost to those properties?
So it's the value that was lost to those properties. It's just under 2% of the calls. It's 1.88% of the calls that we go on are fire calls. And the dollar loss is just under 1%.
Excellent.
Chief, I'm just trying to wrap my head around these overlapping calls and the percentage of the overlapping calls, which might be for fires versus medical emergencies, and how this is actually working.
So the overlapping calls, regardless of the call type, about 1/3 of the time, our calls are overlapping. So that means there's at least 2 units that are out at the same time. We don't know what those calls are all of the time. So they could be a fire alarm, it could be a medical and then a fire alarm. Typically, when the overlapping calls happen, it is generally speaking medical calls, because we go on 80% of our calls are medicals.
Okay.
There are those circumstances though where we may have 2 medicals going and the third call is actually a fire alarm and or a fire call. And that's where the crews will have to either rely on our neighbors to back them up or get units to clear as quickly as possible. Typically working with our Hennepin County ambulance partners, they'll recognize those call types and help us get out of there as quickly as we can to muster the resources on scene. But it is one of those things where we're getting concerned as we start to see that trend line move up and more calls being back to back or overlapping.
Well, I see it as a concern since I live in an area of high medical calls. I see the fire department a lot where I live and where I work. And I guess my concern is how we can't prevent these calls from coming in, but how do you manage emergency calls? When I see trucks maybe 3 or 4 times a day some days. And so I'm just trying to wonder, how the fire department is looking at and I'm assuming there's increased medical calls lately. And I don't want to assume anything, but what else, is there anything else that can be done to manage these overlaps in the future?
So I think one of the things that we're working on is a staffing plan to bring us not only with what we're trying to do in the fire department is to put 3 additional firefighters on, which would make 3 9-person shifts. And really that's so that we don't have to use Rescue 1 to back up Engine 2 on those critical calls.
That's what I was trying to clarify in my mind, that you will have trucks, enough people if we have these firefighters.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the goal would be to continue to increase our staffing as the call volume goes up. I think the challenge with that is we're a general fund department, so
Right.
everything that we ask for becomes a burden to the general fund. So we have to kind of balance what's the most appropriate for the city that we're serving
Okay.
with the resources that we have around us. And I mean, it's a delicate line that we're walking, but I think overall we have the ability to have a very high impactful service with a very low number of people. That said, I don't think that a staff of 30 is probably ideal. I think as we do our homework, we're recognizing that Minnesota overall has always been challenged with adequate staffing. So our number is probably higher than that, and we hope to have a solid plan for staffing moving into the future.
Thank you.
Chief, Jeffrey Bruzek. Sorry, now I'm on video, I guess. A question to piggyback on what Commissioner Stratton was talking about. How do these numbers look compared to 2019? I don't, we don't want to blame everything on COVID, but was there an increased amount of these overlap calls prior to the pandemic? And so going, 17, 18, 19, and then obviously 20 and 21. Is there any reason to believe that still may not, that may change based on that? And I know we're not out of the pandemic response, but I was just wondering if that's at all, if this has been an historical trend that keeps going up, which it looks like you're showing me the historical trend right now. So
yeah, so here's kind of and you can see the trend line, and this is based on historical as well as forecast populations as well. So what we did was we took the numbers of right out of the comprehensive plan that community development put together, and used those to help quantify the numbers of people within the city as best we could to break down where they are in the city and then build our trend line. You can see that we did have a little bit of a dip in 2020, and I can tell you anecdotally that trend line in 2020 is down only because of the first quarter. When everybody went into isolation and everything was locked down, we had probably the lowest number of calls March and April. After that, things went right back up to normal. You can see in 2021, we started going back up, and I think we will continue to see those calls escalate. I think medical calls will continue to be a high service call for us as the density continues to get more and more, as well as the senior housing stock continues to develop as well. So as a city, we're recognizing that those factors will have an influence on our ability to do good work. The nice thing is we have the ability to forecast and look at it and say, these are the things that we're going to need to have in place to be successful into the future.
okay.
Any additional questions?
I guess just one question. I don't know if you know this answer. If this forecast is the incidents are based on population, do we expect the population of Richfield to double in the next 25 years?
No, actually the population probably will cap out at around 40,000 is kind of what community development is predicting.
Did you say 40,000, Chief, or 48?
40.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the increase in calls that goes commensurate with that is just the aging population as part of it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was I was wondering how we were going to fit 70,000 people in the city, but
it's going to go really vertical then at that point.
Yeah.
And that is my 2021 update.
Good.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Commissioners.
And then we'll now look at the 2022 Fire Department Outlook. Chief?
Yeah, I kind of gave you a heads up on that. The hiring of the 3, and then the promotional process coming up in September. Those are really our big items. So I will pause there if there's any other questions.
I have just one question. We had spoke about this, I think, 2 meetings ago. You had indicated there was some very early start about discussing whether or not you're going to do like a cadet program or apprenticeship program. Have you looked into that at all to address? I know that we're talking about staffing earlier.
Yep.
And going forward,
Right.
has that been looked at any further going forward with that in the union and stuff?
So the process that you approve for firefighters, actually, we massaged the process to be a little bit more inclusive, so that there was less restrictions on the hiring. Of the 3 candidates that we currently have conditional offers out with, 2 of them would qualify as minority candidates. So our HR department has said that we are in a pretty good position as far as being able to say that we're doing everything we can with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we haven't really pursued the cadet program at this point, but we are certainly trying to figure out ways to encourage the people that are in the community that are underrepresented on this fire department, trying to find ways that we can encourage them to actually join the best job ever. So.
Great. The best job ever. I love that
Absolutely.
enthusiasm, Chief. We don't have enough positivity and enthusiasm in this day and age, but the best job ever, sign us up. I think that is
Well,
from our leader.
That's the swag I want. Best job ever
Yeah.
on my t-shirt.
Right. Hmm.
All right, I will move on to other business, and I have a couple of things I wanted to bring up. In December, I provided the commission's year-end report to the mayor and the city council. They were very impressed with what the fire department has done in the past year, and once again thanked all the members of the fire department for the job that they do. It makes it easier for the commission when you all do your job so well. We can present it to the public this way. So it was a very nice meeting, and I was very happy to do it. The other thing is that, as most of you know, we're doing strategic planning in the city of Richfield. And I was on one of the focus groups as an appointed official. And once again, many people on this group were very complimentary of both fire and police, but they are also want to see more presence, more hiring. That was one of the #1 things, the safety and security of our city. So it was nice to see other people and other commissioners recognizing the work that our safety in the building. So I do want to thank you for that. And of course, I made my thoughts very clear on, the fire department. And so it's just nice to hear other people, because we know what a great job you do, but it's nice to hear members of the community say the same thing. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you, President Stratton. I appreciate that.
Any other business? James, Jeffrey, firefighters I see a couple. Do you have any questions or? No? Well, once again, thank you so much. It's a new year, and hopefully we will see you this summer sometime, if not before. So I move at this time to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
Jeffrey Bruzek, I second that motion.
All in favor?
James Frechette, aye.
Jeffrey Bruzek, aye.
Mary Stratton, aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.